A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were no clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and front porch lights illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd. I'd never smelt that before around the house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I'd just got off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 yet, I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up sometime later. Not sure what woke me, but I heard a noise inside the house. I wasn't worried right away, because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work, on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand. I hadn't heard anything on my phone. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had a light sensor that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes I could make out that it was a 9 something, and I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of my house. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I'd done that and opened the door and had stepped inside my bedroom. That house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway, the one I was in and a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open, and I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway past my door and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I just started to lift myself up when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when the bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my bedroom and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, and some weights on a table where I'd painted my maintenance models. I guess they decided that if someone were hiding, it would be in the bedroom, because they charged back into the room and turned on the lights. A moment later the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic, just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans, with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away, and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in a mental hospital for several mental disorders resulting in erratic, violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatter as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I'd left my cell phone when I ran to the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing me. After some time the noises stopped, and I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was the intruder had flipped my bed over. I assumed it was an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I'd heard after he'd stepped away from the closet. However, I couldn't find my cell, so I went to the landline by the bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call from downstairs. The first floor was an absolute mess, but I had expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped, all the books, pictures and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened, and all the boxes of canned food had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often used to smoke meth. So they think he'd been watching my house for a while. I'd realised that he must have been out there smoking for a cigarette when I arrived. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with a family member or friends that night and get that door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple of hours cleaning things up. I would often go over to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police had found the cigarette butts and foil, but I couldn't see anything. The next day I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and sides of my house. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened that night. I lived there another 3 years without any incidents. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of bed, going to my closet and climbing into the attic as quickly as possible. I even kept it when I moved. Expect now I go to a crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I'd been a bit slower to get to the attic, or if he didn't go into the bathroom at the end of the hall first. This past Monday, my co-workers and I returned to our hotel room from a day out of work in the field. Rebecca and I walked to our rooms, and as we stood outside, I opened mine, and I saw someone in the bathroom. I said, "Hello?" Nobody answered. My first instinct was it was a cleaning lady in there for some reason, and then I saw my bag with my clothes in her hand. I said to my co-worker, "There's a woman in my room." I then asked the woman, "What are you doing with my stuff?" And it gets a little fuzzy here because I can't quite remember everything I said and what she said in return. But she kept mumbling about how her key still worked, how it still worked, and how she got in. I was in shock, and she was obviously very flustered, having been caught mid-robbery. She dropped my bags and fumbled around with her purse and a white plastic bag. By this time, my co-worker was behind me, watching all the insanity unfold. This woman was scrambling and walking towards the door, and I said, "Hey, what's in the bag?" Thinking it's probably my stuff, and so she said, No, it's just my things. It's just my things, I'll show you." And so she did. I looked and didn't see anything of mine, and so since I'm obviously in shock, I let her leave. I went into my room, and it's been ransacked. I did a quick look around to see if anything had been taken. All of my electronics were still there. Then I went into my bathroom and saw my underwear, my bikini and my clothes shoved into my own bags randomly. Even my passport was shoved in there. Then I looked on the counter and I saw that she'd gone into my medication. I'm not sure what was going through her head at the moment other than I wanted it back. So I ran out the doors to go find her. I ran to the laundry room downstairs and out the other side of the hotel. I realised I was never going to find her, so my co-worker and I went down to the lobby to tell them what happened, and we then called the police. We went up back to my room to wait, and I noticed there's a metal bat on my bed, a little larger than one of those novelty wooden bats you can get at a baseball game, but there's also a flashlight on the end. She must have left it behind in a hurry. She also left behind a necklace that must have fallen out of her bag when she was scrambling with mine. I was mostly freaking out at this point. I thought she'd gotten away with my medication that I needed. The police got there too and took our statements and looked around the room as well. One thing I noticed was that there was bits of drywall in the sink, and I pointed that to the cops, but none of us really knew where it came from. We started looking at the door and the window to see if she'd pried her way in somehow, but there was nothing. So we kind of just went with the idea that she'd had a spare key or something like that, even though the hotel front desk were adamant there was no way she could have had one. The officer that came brought 2 more officers as backup, but after our statements were taken there was nothing else they could really do, so they left. I sat down to finally make some calls to tell everyone what the hell was going on, and as I'm on the phone I'm thinking about the drywall in the sink and how it still doesn't make sense to me. So I'm on the phone and looking at the drywall in the mirror on the right hand side above the sink, and then it hit me. I got my co-worker and asked her to pull away the mirror. We took the mirror down and there's a hole just big enough to fit one separate person inside. I asked Brian and Rebecca if I should call the cops again to let them know what I found. My boss said, "There's still 2 cops in the car in the parking lot." So I went down to tell them, and the female cop kind of rolled her eyes, but the young guy said, "I'll come check it out." They both came back up, looked in the hole and found a pillow, blankets, cigarettes, clothes and toothbrushes. This woman had clearly been living in that wall behind my mirror for God knows how long. She had access to me and my room at all times. I know it might be hard to picture, but there was a crawl space about 2 feet wide in between the 2 rows of rooms. One of the officers called the original officer to come back and take pictures. She explained to him what's going on, and all I hear over the radio is, "No fucking way." He comes back, takes pictures, and is just mind blown as the rest of us. Obviously we packed our things up immediately and left. What's even crazier is she'd probably been there a long time. The last time we stayed at this hotel, I could randomly smell cigarette smoke, and I just assumed someone was smoking in their bathroom and it was travelling through the air vents. But no, a junkie was smoking just on the other side of my mirror. She had access to other rooms too. The holes in the wall from renovation, and the hotel hadn't properly patched up the coverings. She could have been hanging out in people's rooms when they were gone. It just goes to show, if you ever see drywall in the sink and there's a mirror above, don't look behind it.